Hello and welcome to this video tutorial from BlenderCookie.com. My name is Jonathan Williamson and we're going to have a bit of fun today, and that is by creating a CG Cookie coffee cup. Now, I know that Wes and myself and David and probably the majority of us Blender artists spend a lot of time drinking coffee, and we enjoy our coffee an awful lot. So it seems very fitting that we should go ahead and create a CG Cookie coffee cup just for this occasion. So this is actually going to be something that's fairly easy to do, but will give a pretty good result. And the kind of coffee cup that I'm talking about is one that you would get from most any coffee shop in a to-go cup, such as the one that you can see here. Now, I apologize for the terrible photography. It was taken from my phone, and this was just a coffee cup that I happen to have sitting in my car, as is a fairly common occasion, actually. Perhaps, unfortunately. But anyway, so this is the kind of cup that we're going to be making. Now, most of you are probably very familiar with this, and so we're not going to really worry about working from references, since we just have a general idea of what we're going to be creating. Now, I actually have this same cup sitting on my desk right now, but I'm only going to be looking at it for the minor details. So let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be something fairly simple to model, and we're going to start out by modeling the actual cup portion. So let's just hit X and delete the cube, and we want to start out by creating a circle. So we're just going to go into top view, turn off perspective mode. That's just by hitting 7 and then 5. And I'm going to hit Shift A to add a mesh and choose circle. On the circle, I immediately want to either change the vertices down here to 12 or hit F6 to bring up my operator panel, and I'll change it to 12. And I can just hit enter. Now I can hit tab to go into edit mode, switch 1 to front view, and let's first just hit E to extrude and take it up, say, about 4 units. And this will just give us a fairly good height. Although I may go ahead and take it down to about 3.5, depending on whether you're drinking a 12, 16, or 20 ounce coffee. And then we want to just go ahead and hit S, and we'll scale it up maybe about 2, here we go, about 2 units. Just a little bit, just to give us this nice angle here. And now this gives us our basic shape for the coffee cup. I now want to go ahead, and while in object mode, I'm just going to hit Control 2, which is the shortcut to add a subsurf modifier very quickly. Now from the modifiers panel, I'm going to go ahead and enable optimal display, and then from the toolbar, I'm going to go ahead and enable the shading smooth, and you can see that we're getting these black lines. So let's hit tab to go into edit mode, select everything with A, and hit Control N to recalculate the normals. Now we can go ahead and start extruding in the individual shapes. So first I want to create the lip on the top of it. So I'm just going to first select Alt-right click to select this loop, hit E to extrude, and take it up 1 unit. Now I'm going to go ahead and extrude this in 1 unit, and then I'll extrude it down 1 unit. And this just gives me a basic lip with which to work from. Now I'm going to go ahead and Alt-right click to select these 2 outer loops, hit E to extrude, and then hit S and Shift Z so that I don't scale along the Z axis, and take it out just about, 1 unit actually. And that will just give me the lip with which, where the paper is curling around. Now obviously you can see that we need to go ahead and scale in our interior loops because they are way too wide. Paper is pretty thin. So let's go and hit S and then Shift Z again, and take it in to just a tiny bit thicker than our entire cup. That ought to be just about right there. And then we can go ahead and scale this in a little bit. And maybe 1 unit was a little bit too much for this, so we'll bring it back. And then let's go ahead and add in another edge loop by Control R along the surface and take it right up there. And then we're going to add in 1 more in order to add in some extra thickness right here, as if the paper is curling over on itself. Just something about like that. That gives us a pretty good effect. Now let's go ahead and Alt-right click to select our interior loop right here, and we're just going to hit E to extrude and take it right down to the bottom to right about, actually we're going to go all the way down, and then we'll scale in to about right there, and that should be just about right. Now what we want to do is go ahead and just connect these 2 edge loops. So I'm going to go ahead and enable snapping by hitting Shift Tab and Control Shift Tab to switch to vertex snapping. So now when I hit E to extrude, I can just hit S to scale and immediately snap to one of these vertices, enabling me to then just select everything, hit W, and remove doubles to just merge those instantaneously. Now let's go ahead and add in 2 more edge loops, one on the inside, one on the outside. Just taking it right down. I'll go ahead and turn off snapping. And we're just taking it right down such that we can add some good thickness to this, or some sharpness to it. There we go. And now what we want to do is go ahead and create the interior portion of the cup. And what I mean by that is basically the floor of it. Because the way that these cups are made is actually a roll of paper around like this, and then it has a bottom plate that is just glued in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift D, duplicate this, and then we'll just duplicate it right there, and hit E to extrude, take it up, scale it up, and then we can go ahead and hit E to extrude, scale it in again, one more time, and we're just going to scale in most of the way, and then let's go ahead and fill in these circles, which we can actually just do, since this is a flat surface, it's okay to have a few triangles. So hit E to extrude, right click, and then W, and merge at center. Here we go. Okay, now on this, I want to be sure to add in a bit more thickness right there. And so all of this right now is currently right up to the outside wall. So I'm going to hit S and Shift Z, scale it in just a little bit, and then we'll select this edge loop again, hit E to extrude, and take it out to about there. And that will just show that it's 2 separate pieces. So now if we select everything, we can hit W and Shade Smooth, Control N to fix those normals, and there we go. You know, this will never be shown in pretty much any render unless you have it laying on its side, but it's a nice little detail to add in to add that extra bit of polish. Now as we're rotating around here, you'll notice the grid is really distracting, so I'm just going to hit N and zoom down, and underneath display, I'm going to uncheck the grid floor just to get rid of that, because I really don't want to see it. I'll hit N to hide that again. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and keep going. This is pretty much it for the cup, but, well, actually not quite. What we want to do now is, if you remember on our reference, which I'll just pull right back here, you know, it has this seam here where the paper is rolled over itself. So let's go ahead and create that. And this is actually going to be really easy to do. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to select everything from top view, hit R, and hold down Control. Although when we do that, you'll notice that nothing happens. And this is because our snapping mode is set to vertex rather than increment. So let's set it back to increment. Hold down Control while rotating, and we're just going to rotate 15 degrees such that these lines are exactly horizontal here. And then I'm going to hit Control R, add in another edge loop, and I'm going to take it right up to this, about like that. Actually, I'm going to take it right up, and then I'm going to hit Alt S and scale along the normals, like so. And then I'm going to go in and zoom in real here and add in another edge loop right at the base, to which then I can add in one more between those to then pull out along the y-axis to show that those are overlapping. Now, you'll notice that this has given us a problem in that it's now coming away from our previous circle. So let's go ahead and select this loop, which by default we're going to go ahead and select part of that because we just use the box select. So let's hit Shift L while hovering over one of the vertices made up of the floor, and that will deselect all of that. Now we're going to hit G and X and just pull this in along the x-axis about like that. And that will add the circle, or recorrect the shape of the circle. Now some of this may be a bit not quite thick enough, and so you can do a bit more scaling if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as is. Now I might actually go ahead and select these 2 loops and pull them out along the y-axis a little bit more, just to show there's a little bit more of an overlap there. There we go. Okay, that ought to be just about enough. And so now we can go ahead and leave this where it's at, and we're going to go ahead and create the lid. Although actually, something I don't like is that this still has a bit of a point to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an edge loop here and an edge loop here, just both of them right in the center. And then I'm going to hit period on my keyboard with this cursor still in the center, which if it's not in the center, you can just hit Shift C. And now I'm going to hit S to scale and Shift Z to scale along the z-axis and take it out just a little bit, which will help correct that shape. Now you may need to do a little bit of fixing, which maybe if you rotate these around the z-axis like this, you can kind of even out some of these shapes. There we go. We may need to bring these in a little bit. There we go. That just helps to recorrect that shape where the extra edge loops here were sharpening them up and causing a bit of a point. There we go, that looks much, much better. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and create the lid. So we're going to do this much the same way. We're going to hit Shift A, add mesh, circle, hit F6, and let's just use 12 vertices again. Hit Tab to go into edit mode. Let's rotate this around the x-axis 90 degrees. And the reason that it's facing the view rather than laying flat along the grid floor is because I have set in my user preferences underneath the, I believe it's the, let's see, editing, I've set my align to view just because it can come in handy whenever you want to add a new object directly the way that you're facing. But so now, while in edit mode, I'm going to hit R and X and type in 90. And let's hit Tab to leave object edit mode. And we're going to hit G and Z and pull this up right to the top of the cup, basically, just to get the origin point right here, rather than having it all the way down here. So I'll hit Tab to go back in edit mode. And let's first create the lip of our cup, which you can see again in our reference here. We want to create this lip like this. And so this is going to be pretty easy to do. So I'm just going to scale this up first. And the way that I want to do this is basically by encompassing this lip. So I'm first going to go to right about here, because this is the way that the cups work, is they're basically friction or tension fit. So I'm going to hit E to extrude, take this up above the lip, and then I'll add in 2 edge loops between the two, scale it up about like that, and that'll give me my lip about how I want it. So now I can go ahead and take this down a little bit, hit E to extrude in to create that top ridge over the lip. Then we'll extrude this down again, scale it in, and then extrude in again. And what I'm doing, I'm actually looking at the cup here on my desk, but if you look at any other cup, you can basically see the shapes that I'm creating. So now I'm going to go ahead and extrude this up, which will create basically the drinking ridge, to which I'll scale in just a little bit to add in that angle. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit E to extrude, scale it in about 2, looks about right. And then I'm going to go ahead and extrude this down just a little bit to create this ridge that you see right here. And then here in a second we'll create this this inset here. But let's go ahead and finish the ridge of the cups. We want to add in this extra little lip right here. And so this is actually really easy to do. We're just going to select this, hit E to extrude, take it down a little bit, scale it out a little bit. And then we want to go ahead, well, maybe bring it out a little bit more. I'm going to add in 2 more loops and scale out just a bit. And then take this, hit E to extrude, and scale out just a little bit more. Now, I'm not going to add any depth to this yet, because we're going to do that with a solidify modifier, as that'll make it a lot easier and save us some geometry. I'm going to go ahead and add in a subsurf modifier to this at level 2 by hitting Control 2 while in object mode. Turn on optimal display, and let's go ahead and shade it smooth. Select everything and Control in. Now, before we go any further on this, let's go ahead and add in some perimeter edge loops to sharpen things up. So we'll add in a loop right here. I'll add in another one right next to that and scale it out. Go ahead and add in one right here, another one right there, and right there. So this just adds in those nice sharpening edges. We'll go ahead and add in another one right here, and another one right there, which will sharpen those up nicely. And before we go any further, let's go ahead and add in that solidify modifier so you can see what I'm talking about. And on this, the solidify modifier allows us to add depth to an object very easily. So if you do this, you can see it's adding depth to it. And it just pushes it along the normals. I'm going to go ahead and leave this at 0.01. But I want to just set the depth to go in, because I want to define the outer shape of my surface with my mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and change the offset to 1, which will just make it push everything in rather than out. Or actually out rather than in both directions. And so now the thickness of maybe 0.02 ought to be just about right. We can go ahead and turn on even thickness, high quality normals, which you may not notice much in this, but if you have more of an irregular mesh, you may notice that. And now combined with our subsurf modifier, we can see that maybe we need to go ahead and scale some things out. So I'll just scale this out about like that. Scale that out. And that looks pretty much right. Maybe we took it a little bit too far. There we go. That looks about right. And so let's go ahead, and this actually looks a little large currently. I'm going to go ahead and bring this ridge up a little bit so it's not quite so deep, about like that. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this ridge on our cup. So I'm just going to hide the lid, select an object mode, hide. I'm going to pull this whole ridge up on the cup. I'm just going to pull it up just a little bit like that. It's just a little too strong currently. And then let's go ahead and select all of our outside edges like this, and we're going to hit S and Shift Z to scale them in just like that without actually affecting the height of it. So now we can hit Alt H to unhide our lid, and let's go ahead and select all these edges. Again, we're going to hit S and Shift Z, scale them in until it begins intersecting right about there. We can also bring this up about like that and scale that out just a little bit more. And there we go. That looks much, much, much better. It was just a little too thick before. I'll go ahead and bring this out just a little bit more. Go ahead and bring this out a little bit more. We'll maybe add in one more edge loop right here, which will bring that down. And this is all maybe a little too far out currently. So I'll select all these loops. And we'll hit S and Shift Z, bring them out about like that. There we go. That looks pretty good. This inside rim is maybe not far enough out. Okay, that looks much better. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create this inside edge. I just went ahead and turned off my manipulators by hitting Shift Space. And so the way that I'm going to do this is I've got this extruded, and so what I want to do is go ahead and create this inside lip right here. Well, this is going to be pretty easy to do. What I want to do is just go ahead, and it's about 2/3, so I'm just going to create it from right here. You know, it doesn't have to be exact, it's just a little over the halfway point. So I'm going to go ahead and select these two vertices here, along with these two vertices here. I'm going to hit F and create that face. Then I'll go ahead and do the same thing here. So I'll hit F and select these and hit F to create those faces. Now what I want to do is go ahead and add in actually I'm going to delete this last face here, and I'm going to add in 2 edge loops here, to which I'll then just scale out along the x-axis a little bit, scale out these ones a little bit further, and then we're going to go ahead and fill this. And then we'll go ahead and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create an entire perimeter edge or face loop, because what that'll do is allow me to very easily create sharpen this up. One of the tricks to good hard body modeling is to always use perimeter edge loops basically to sharpen things. And what I want to do is basically always have a full face loop around any perimeter such that I can easily add in an edge loop. And so currently what I want to do is I'm just going to hit E to extrude, and then I'm going to scale in about like this. And then I'm going to just go in and delete these couple of extraneous vertices that I don't want that are causing weird things there. I'm going to go ahead and delete these 2 vertices, and then these 3 loops here, I'm going to hit Control Shift Tab, switch over to Vertex Snapping, turn snapping on, and I'm just going to snap up to right there along the y-axis, keeping this nice and sharp. I'm going to hit select everything, Control N, recalculate my normals. For the time being, I'm going to turn off the solidify modifier while in edit mode, just so I can see everything clearly. Since this is a hard surface model, it's okay if I go ahead and add in a couple of triangles here. Again, this is on a flat surface, so it's not going to matter. And since I've added in this perimeter loop there, I've still got full control of my surface, so that works fine Now I'm going to do is I'm going to select this whole surface. I'm going to hit E to extrude, turn off my snapping or switch it back to increment. I'm going to scale this in just a little bit. Notice again, I'm giving myself a full face loop around this. And then I want to go ahead and I'm just going to scale this in, or I'm going to go ahead and hit E to extrude, take it down a little bit. And then from the side view, we want to go ahead and take this down to about there. We'll go ahead and scale it down a little bit. Maybe scale it along the y-axis a little bit more. Take it in a little bit like that. Just giving us this nice angle that we have right here. Although you can't really see from that photo, but we can see from this photo. You can see this nice ridge here. We're just creating that shape. So I'll switch back to Blender. Maybe scale this down a bit more. Something about like that. Ought to be just about right. Maybe scale along the y-axis a bit more. Scale along the x a little bit. Can hit E to extrude, scale it in a little bit, a little more along the y-axis, give me a nice ridge, and then I want to go ahead and fill in this form. Well, let's go ahead and just start filling in faces, although really to do this well, I'm going to go ahead and delete these faces here. I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 edge loops, and the reason being is that then allows me to fill in these faces right here nicely, and goes ahead and gives me a quad right there. So in fact, I can go ahead and get rid of those triangles I had earlier, which if I just scale these out a little bit, that'll fit nicely there. And I can fill that and fill that. And just to make sure these are nice and smooth, we'll go ahead and scale these out. That actually improves my topology a lot. Keeps that nice and sharp. Go ahead and add in another edge loop right there just to sharpen that up. And just like that, I've got pretty much the whole shape for this coffee cup. Last thing I need to do is I'll just go ahead and select this face here. Notice I've already got my perimeter edge loops right here and here. Actually, I should say face loops. And so I'll just hit E to extrude, W and smooth a few times. Then I'll hit E to extrude again, take it down along the Z-axis a bit, take it down a bit more, hit X and delete faces. And now I've got a nice interior loop or depth to this. Now this last one got distorted a little bit, so I'm going to hit X, delete vertices. So like this one, hit E to extrude, take it down along the Z-axis, and there we go. Even with the solidify modifier on, I'm good to go. And it's okay, it's a little rounder than you might see on some coffee cups, but that's alright. You know, I don't really need to worry about strengthening this up, although I could real easily by just adding in, say, 2 edge loops right here. That'll soften that up easily. I can go ahead and select these, scale them along the x-axis. Maybe go ahead and take these, scale them in along the x-axis a little bit more, and now I've got pretty much a perfect shape for that ridge like you would see on an actual coffee cup. Now, just to prevent my solidify modifier from sticking through a little bit like it is right there, I'll take this in along the y-axis a bit more. I'll go ahead and even these up just a little bit, maybe scale these to 0 along the x-axis, which will just make my shape a little more even and more accurate. And there we go. Maybe go ahead and just take this down just a little bit. This in along the Y just a little bit more. Scale a little bit along the Y. I'm just fixing where the solidify modifier was sticking through just a little bit. Fixes that. The whole thing's maybe a little too wide along the X, so I'll pull that in. And there we go. That gives us the hole to drink out of. And the last thing that we need to do before we go on to rendering and texturing is to go ahead and create the Java jacket, you know, the small piece of cardboard that keeps from burning your hand. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to top view, hit Shift A, add mesh and circle. I'm going to hit F6, change my vertices over to 12. I'll hit Control W, save my file. I'm going to move this up to right about there so it's in the center. I'm going to go ahead and scale this up to about there. Scale it out a bit, hit E to extrude, take it down to about there, should be about the right width for, or length for a Java jacket. I'll go ahead and hit Tab to leave edit mode, Control 2, turn on a subsurf modifier, set this shading to smooth. Let's go ahead and add in a solidify modifier. We'll add the thickness to 0.04. Let's change the offset to 1 so it's pushing in rather than in both directions. Go ahead and add in an edge loop by hitting Control R right to the edges to sharpen those up a little bit. Then we can go ahead and select everything, hit Shift S or S and Shift Z, scale this in. It's okay if it's a little bit larger. We can see we need to scale out here to about right there. Give us the Java jacket. We can select everything, Control N to fix those normals. And then what I want to do is go ahead and add in the ridges, because basically these are made, if we look at our reference here, you can't see it on here, but there's actually three things on it. There's two seams where they've been cut to allow it to fold flat, and then there's actually a seam where it overlaps itself. So let's first add in those two cuts, and we're going to do this right on the side. So we're going to select everything, rotate 15 degrees, and then we're just going to add in an edge loop on each side here to make it nice and sharp. We'll do the same thing here and here. If we go ahead and turn on optimal display, we can kind of clean up our view a little bit. Then we're going to go ahead and select these. Oh, we want to set the offset to -1. Whoops, there we go. Now it's pushing in. And we're going to go ahead and select this edge and this edge here. And we're just going to hit S and X to scale in along the X-axis, about like that, so you can see where it's been cut to allow it to fold flat. And now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and Alt-right click to select this edge, and we're just going to hit V to rip it apart, pull it out along the Y-axis a little bit, hit E to extrude, take it in over like this maybe, take this out a little bit more. We can see where it's overlapping. We'll go ahead and add in another edge loop to sharpen that up nicely like that. We'll do the same thing on this one. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and let's try shearing this. So that's, I believe the command is shear. It allows us to just change the angle on this very easily. So that works real well. Control-Alt-Shift-S. We'll do this in the same direction like so. Get a little bit more of the rotation in there like we want it. Maybe we'll then rotate this manually a little bit, rotate this a little bit, and then you can see we need to go ahead. Let's go ahead and shear this. So that's just Control-Alt-Shift-S. We want to do it from the front view, so it rotates like that. There we go. Maybe we'll rotate this back a little bit, pull this back along the Y-axis just a little bit, and there we go. That gives us that effect really nicely. Maybe we can unrotate this like we had, because it doesn't actually need it after doing the shearing on the inside one there. Just to even this up, we can go ahead and shear this just a little bit, and that'll just kind of smooth that transition. Pull it out along the Y-axis just a little bit. Then I'll go ahead and select these edge loops on both sides, and then we're just going to scale them out along the X-axis just a little bit to show this kind of almost like a flattened oval with sharp corners look that you can see if you were to look at a Java jacket from the top. And maybe we'll even do it just a little bit more just to kind of better show the actual shape of them. You can see here on the bottom we need to go ahead and scale everything in, excluding the Z-axis to about right there. Actually, maybe did that a little bit too much. We want to do it just on the bottom, it looks like. Oh, no, actually we're good to go. So we'll leave that just like that. Maybe select everything, pull it up a little bit along the Z-axis, and we are good to go.